Right. You went in the chapel, she was by your side. After you done married, you're feeling okay. Boo Boo Mel, just listen to what people have to say. When you see your madam walking middle of the street, people just stand up and look down at she crooked feet. I will say she husband those perpendicular. So everybody just call she Madam Dracula. So Melody, come back and tell him you married a tramp and you cable me to come. Mellow come, and the day of the wedding, she loaded with rum, still rum.
Welcome to Caribbean Insight.
They're grabbing bongo. I just want to ask them to be sure. How much is enough? How much is enough? In flashy shares, they trick their hands. They rob them old people land. How much is enough? How much is enough? Now, to bed on a beach, can't pass. They fence every blade of grass. Mr. Millionaire, your feelings here, you're treating we rough. How much is enough? Beaches for everybody to share. And how much is enough? For the buying and the dumping everywhere. Boy, how much is enough? Who tell them to fence from the beach from we? How much is enough? But where the hell they get that story? Boy, how much is enough? Only finance companies and all the mega industries, commercial banks, they head the board. I talking frank, they live like lords, but they want more. They grab it, come on, they are the big and tough. Put broke on the avenue. Look how quick they grab their food. West Orange, they back the sea to build some big monstrosities, and they want more. They grab in power with a total repugnance for the poor. How much is enough? How much is enough? The poor corporate fisherman, they're pushing them off the land. How much is enough? How much is enough? Hell, not because you pay.
Welcome to Caribbean Insight. We have an explosion of Caribbean video.
Well, Melody, you have me in a rage, winding up on the stage. You feel you're looking cute, but when you finish, take off the dead man's suit. You shouldn't tell me that this is what I am compelled to tell you flat. I hope it doesn't say that I am crack. In a while I'll be whining behind your back. Well, believe, don't touch my flesh. I wouldn't say you're fresh. Back to back, belly to belly, and I think you are slack.
At this time, Harry Belafonte's recording of Melody's Boo Boo Man was on the top 20 charts in the US.
I wonder why nobody don't like me. Or is it a fact that I'm ugly? I wonder why nobody don't like me. Or is it a fact that I'm ugly? I leave my whole house and go. My children don't want me no more. Bad talk inside the house they bring. And when I talk they start to sing. Mama look at Boo Boo, they shout. Then but I tell them shut up your mouth. That is your daddy. Oh no, my daddy can be ugly, so shut your mouth, go away. Mama look at Boo Boo Day. Shut your mouth, go away. Mama look at Boo Boo Day. I couldn't even digest me supper due to the children's behavior, John. Yes, Pa.
Come here a moment. Ring the bell too much, too impudent. John says it's James who started first. James tells the story in reverse. I grabbed my belt from off me waist. You should hear them screaming round the place. Mama look at Boo Boo, they shout. Then Mama tell them shut up your mouth. That is your daddy. Oh no, my daddy can be ugly, so shut your mouth, go away. Mama look at Boo Boo Day. Shut your mouth, go away. Mama look at Boo.
Now you see.
Oh, yes, good evening and welcome to Politics 101 on a Tuesday evening. The music there of Lord Melody, the old timers will know Melody, best known for that song, Mama Look a Boo Boo Day. But you know what you were seeing on the screen there? It was Harry Belafonte and Nat King Cole singing Calypso. Yes, Nat King Cole singing Calypso. Calypso was big in the United States in the 30s and 40s, and the bestseller. Bestseller.
John?
Yes, Pa.
Come here a moment. Ring the bell too much, too impudent. John says it's James who started first. James tells the story in reverse. I grabbed my belt from off me waist. You should hear them screaming round the place. Mama look at Boo Boo, they shout. Then Mama tell them shut up your mouth. That is your daddy. Oh no, my daddy can be ugly, so shut your mouth, go away. Mama look at Boo Boo Day. Shut your mouth, go away. Mama look at Boo.
Now you see why it's only happening in one place.
Yes, the great Nat King Cole, along there with Harry Belafonte, singing Lord Melody, Mama Look a Boo Boo Day. Yes, Nat King Cole sang Calypso too. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. All of you, wherever you're joining us from, we are glad to have you. We are glad to have you on a Tuesday evening. And we're looking forward to a good conversation tonight. Audreyanna Thomas is going to join us in a little while. They had that demonstration exercise yesterday and today. Yesterday in front of the Court of Appeal, and today in front of the High Court. And they're protesting the refusal of the government to substantiate the appointments of the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary. As you know, those acting appointments, they've been there since, 2016? And the government is refusing to to regularize um, the appointments. They've appointed Mr. Hicken. They have appointed all sorts of people, but they do not want to appoint the Chief Justice. They do not want to appoint the Chancellor of the Judiciary. Two African Guyanese women, who have been sitting there. The opposition leader has said that he is ready to sign off. He's ready to sign off on those appointments. But the government is not budging. And so these ladies, they have been out there yesterday and today. And of course, protesting. We expect Sister Audreyanna Thomas to be here shortly. She is the person behind what's happening out there. Welcome, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from the United States or you are joining us from the wider Caribbean, Canada. If you are in Europe, welcome to Politics 101. Please share the link and let everyone know that we are here. Let everyone know that we are here on a Tuesday evening. Let's listen to a little bit more of Lord Melody's music as we await Sister Audreyanna Thomas to join us. Audreyanna Thomas.
Ponte doing Calypso would bring great.
Come and make love to me.
They call me brown sugar. I come from Guyana. I come here to disco. I come here to let go.
She started to walk up, she ran.
You, yeah.
She said, call me brown sugar. She was higher than high. Play the music, the hardest hard. Me head feel bad, she shout. She said, call me brown sugar. Slow music make me sad. Play calypso stone on the heat. I'm feeling extra sweet.
They call me brown sugar. I come from Guyana. I come here to disco. I come here to let go. She started to walk up, she ran. You, yeah.
She said, call me brown sugar. I could make you feel sweet. I am youthful, just 21. Oh me, oh my, let's have some fun. She said, call me brown sugar. Got you walk to the bar. Barman, have a drink on me. I'm feeling so happy.
They call me brown sugar. I come from Guyana. I come here to disco. I come here to let go. She started to walk up, she ran. You, yeah.
in the days when they used to sing a lot about Guyana. Remember BG planting and Sparrow telling the doctor, don't ban the BG planting, cause a lot of trouble in Trinidad. Good evening to all of you. Please share the link and let everyone know that we are on. We are going to be talking this evening with Sister Audreyanna Thomas. We're going to be talking about that issue regarding the substantive appointments of the acting Chief Justice and the acting Chancellor of the Judiciary. And there were protests out there yesterday and today, and we are going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about that. Good evening, and welcome to Politics 101. It's a new year. 2025 is here, and it's gone. A week is gone. It's what? Today's the 7th. Today's the 7th of January. The 7th of January. 2025 is here with us. Thank you all so much for supporting our program for another year and for continuing to do so. I wish to thank Sister Natalie, for our donation to Politics 101. Brother Claude, thank you so much for your donation. And Brother Musani, thank you for your donation. Those of you who have made your good on your pledges, we want to thank you for helping us to keep this program going. It's not easy, but you continue to support us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Again, thanks to Natalie, thanks to Musani, and thanks to Claude for their contribution. There is blackout. Blackout is still plaguing Guyana. We understand every day of this week, blackout, and you're going to hear the Vice President talk about how many megawatts for how much money and so forth, and the blackout continues. And we are saying that it is quite a tragedy. It is quite a tragedy that we continue to have blackouts in Guyana. Time I was a boy, even before then, and right up to now. And this government is telling us about development. You know, you hear Guyanese talk about development. You know, somebody run a road, they said development. They see a building, development. That is not development. That's not development. You can have a whole set of roads, but if they don't contribute to the development of people, because the first thing about development is development of people. How those roads, how those buildings are contributing or not contributing to life in the country, for the people, for the people. So we have a lot of things, maybe growth. Of course, the economy is growing. This is the fastest growing economy in the world. But growth is not development. You have to have growth in order to have development. But you can have growth without development. And that is what we are having in Guyana. The government has no plan. It's just throwing things around. No cohesive plan. What is it at the end of 2 or 3 years or 4 years or 10 years do we want to see in our country? What is it we want to see in our country? Where do we want to take education? Do we want, as we want to, get rid of illiteracy? It is possible to do so. It is possible to get rid of illiteracy. And if you can get our country back to the 90-something% literacy that it used to have, then you will be doing our country a great turn. We live in an information age. We live in an information age, and education is important. The academic type of education, the trade type of education, education is important. And you have to have a plan. What is it you want at the end of 3 years, 4 years? And if you have that plan about where you want to take the country educationally, half of our students who start Form 1, by the time they get to write exam in Form 5, half of them drop out of school. So we have a 50% dropout rate. How are you going to have a developed country with a dropout rate of 50%? In a small country like Guyana, you're not talking about a big country like America, 300 million people. We're not even 1 million people. And so when you talk about half of our children dropping out from school, that's quite a lot for us. What kind of development can you have with that? Poverty ranges anywhere from 40% to 50%. How is it you are going to have development with poverty? You can't have development when there is poverty. You cannot have development when there is poverty. So we are not seeing any coherent, cohesive plan on the part of this government to develop our country. And development is, as I said, is not putting up a building. And it aches me that a country that used to be a very educated country, they don't throw wrong words. Development. A little concrete road through a little place, development. We are socializing an ignorant populace. And the PPP is doing that. Anybody says I'm black, they're racist. So you have all generations of our people who are growing up and not knowing the meaning of terms. Our people travel a lot. They go to some of the small islands in the Eastern Caribbean, and the infrastructure is far ahead of Guyana's infrastructure. And they don't talk about development. They talk about developing their infrastructure. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. We have started 2025 and we are going to continue. It's a crucial year. It's a very, very crucial year. Every minute of the day, every day of the week, every week of the month, and every month of the year is very important. There's so much that we have to do to clean up our country. We have to win power, but winning power is just part of the game, part of the task ahead. Part of the task ahead. We've got to clean up our country. All the misapprehension, all the mispronunciation that you're hearing from the president. You know, we are socializing. The president is an agent of socialization. When he speaks with the full office of the presidency, the sovereignty of the country behind him. And when he is as careless as he is, you can imagine what is being passed down to the rest of the society. A good evening to all of you. Welcome to Politics 101. Somebody's saying here it's 85% illiteracy rate. It's quite a shame. It's quite a shame. We are going to be talking tonight with Sister Audreyanna Thomas, and as I said, we have the issue of the appointment of the Chancellor of the Judiciary and the appointment of the Chief Justice. The government is dragging its feet. It's trying to find all kinds of excuses why it would not substantiate the appointments of those two ladies. And Sister Audreyanna Thomas and others have been out there yesterday and today. And we want to talk to Sister Audreyanna about that issue. Sister Audreyanna, good evening to you.
Hi, Dr. Hines. Good evening to you and your viewers. How are you doing tonight?
Well, we are keeping on, as we say, trying to stay with the struggle, because if we take our eyes off the prize for 1 minute, you know what happens.
Yes.
The last time you were here, you are taking up the issue there on the East Bank, where they were building that waste site, and you had kicked up a considerable storm about that. Whatever happened to that issue?
Yes. Dr. Hines, we've lost Dr. Hines for a moment, but yes, Dr. Hines, it was the oil and gas waste treatment plant that was being operated at Coverdale.
Yes, and where is that matter? Whatever happened?
Okay, so the ever since we've had the protest and the pushback, I would say that was in September. The plant has not been operational. So I wouldn't say that the plant has been closed, because we do not have any documentation to that effect. But the plant has not been operational ever since we have had the protests and creating an awareness as to what was happening. And we're in consultation with our lawyers to bring the matter. Yes, Dr. Hines, I think. Yeah, you're not anymore. So yes, so we're in the So since we're not sure if the plant has been closed or if it is that they're just waiting on until things quiet down. But what we do know is that the plant has not been operational since September, since we've had this since we've had all the protectorate. So, but we do intend to explore legal action so that we can be sure that the plant would not be operational at some other point.
The plant would not be operational. Sister Audreyanna Thomas here tonight, talking about that waste plant that they had built there in Coverdale, and she and others from the community had raised their voices. And as she said, the project seems to have been put on hold.
Yes.
The plant is not operational. Before we get to what we want to talk about tonight substantively, you were part of a panel that discussed the issue of land. The government recently passed a bill. Well, it's a law now. I think the president has assented to it, giving the government more power to grab people's lands. And the African Guyanese community, led by IPAD G, raised their voices and arguing that the law, as it is being presented, would lead to the grabbing of African ancestral lands. And you were part of that. You were part of that panel. Your thoughts on the issue?
Yes, Dr. Hines. Dr. Hines, before I mentioned that, you said something earlier, which is an introduction to my response. You said that in terms of how we're being socialized in the society, it's almost in a very to have a very simplistic view of life. And even as it relates to our leaders, it's almost like having a very simplistic view in terms of how policies and development programs and solutions are developed. And I'll share this with you. When I'm going to come to the point, but I'd like to do a little preamble before to put that in context. So remember when they there was this issue recently about the consolidated fund, and I'm just referring to thinking here about the consolidated fund, and the vice president had indicated that it was difficult to sort of disaggregate the monies from the natural resources fund and from the consolidated fund. And when you listen to the vice president, one wonders whether the vice president thinks that the population is, or that we're not thinking people. Because I'm thinking that Ghana is a 750,000 people country, 83,000 square miles. And Mumbai has 30 million people. This is the city of Mumbai. And how is it then in a city of Mumbai, are they able to administer and manage 30 million people and businesses? And the vice president is saying, in our context, India has 1 billion people. Mumbai has 30 million people, which is half of the population of Italy. The population of Italy is about 60 million. I'm just here showing scale. So when the vice president comes out here and he says that it's difficult to disaggregate the natural resources fund, the monies, the finances from the consolidated fund, right? One wonders, in this 83,000 square mile country with 750,000 people, does the vice president realize that this is a very small country in terms of context? The point I'm getting at is with regards to the thinking around developing that bill. That was what you would call the amendments, rather, to the amendments to the Land Acquisition Act for Public Purposes bill, but it's a law now. The thinking behind it is the same thinking as I mentioned. It's a cut and dry law, so to speak. So there was this issue in Peters Hall, and in order to get around that issue, that was the issue where the government was building the bridge, and some of the people took the government to court, and then the court indicated that the government should provide the agreements for all of the people. So, I guess somebody came up with this bright idea to amend the laws to give the government more powers. But what the government did not realize in thinking about amending the laws is the complexity of land in the Guyanese context. It is the complexity of land in the African Guyanese context. And so I think what happened, I have to use the Honorable Member of Parliament, Roysdale Ford's words when he was in Parliament. He said the government ended up creating an embarrassment and a conundrum out of having these are my words now, a simplistic view that, okay, you can just amend the laws and everything is going to be okay. The government is going to be able to promptly acquire lands, private lands, for public purposes. But I think what came out of that, the government realized, based on what IPAJDE has done, what we have been doing, is the government subsequently realized that it is not as easy. Land issues around land ownership is not as easy as they thought. So I made that point to say that just like you said, the Guyanese are traveling people and they have a broader perspective, but I think the government has a very pedestrian view of development and about developmental solutions. And it's almost like the perception is that the Guyanese people have that same pedestrian and simplistic view also.
The Guyanese people have that same simplistic view. And, one is not being snooty, as they say in America. One is not being classist or anything of that nature. You expect that when you're put in charge of a country, that you bring to bear a high form of understanding of the society and understanding of
Absolutely.
the problems. Um, I am not advocating um, W.B. Du Bois's talented 10, although there is a lot of virtue to that idea by Du Bois in his debate with Booker T. Washington. Booker T, of course, was arguing that blacks should get a trade and lay down their bucket, don't worry with political power, just get a trade and accept their second-class citizenship. And Du Bois argued against that. He said, no, 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 no. We should create the talented 10, who then goes back into the community, in this case, the black community, and help to bring that community up to speed. And like I said, there is virtue to the talented 10. But even in our Guyana, although we've been a colonial country, we have always looked to our leaders to articulate what we, the ordinary people, cannot necessarily articulate on our own because we don't have the voice, we don't have the kind of institutional agency. And so it is left to our leaders. And, we criticize the PPP as we must because they're doing nonsense. But it pains one to see that this is beyond nonsense. They're really out of their depth. Clearly, they're incompetent. Clearly, they're not thinking the issues through. Clearly, they don't have an appreciation of the nature of the Guyanese and Caribbean society as we move deep into the 21st century. And that is what we're talking about. They then pass that simplistic thing over. Every time I hear ordinary people talk about progress, I cringe because I'm saying a whole generation is growing up not knowing what the meaning of progress, what's the meaning of development. And that is the danger of these chaps in the PPP. I am sure they are bright people. They went to good schools. Some of them went to universities and so on. So these are not dummies. These are not dunces. So there must be an underlying reason why they're doing what they're doing. And those of you who've been on this program know that I have tried to tease out what I call the subtext behind what they are doing. They have to know that that law is going to negatively affect African Guyanese in particular. They have to know that. But they don't care because they have a particular view of African Guyanese, which they don't speak every day, but their policies speak for them. Sister
Dr. Hank,
One.
before you move on, what I've also concluded is that the vice president said that he was a minister since he was in his 20s, and he was president at 33. The president was, I think, a minister at 31. So what you're looking at are the two persons who are at the helm of the government, the vice president and the president. They have, for most of their adult lives, lived in a bubble. And so what we're seeing, I have studied, I've that's a part of what I do, but I've studied trying to just like you, trying to understand what is really happening. And I've concluded that what we're seeing, part of it are the other things that you have said, but a part of it also is the lack of the life experiences for the position of president and vice president. And to make the kind of, and first of all, Albert Einstein said, if you have to solve a problem in 60, if you have 60 minutes to solve a problem, spend 55 minutes trying to understand the problem, and then the 5 minutes trying to find the solution. But the 55 minutes that you will spend trying to understand the problem, you have to have some degree of expertise and experience, well, life and experiences. So, and somebody said experience is only what you gain through experience. So what we have at the helm of our government, we have a vice president who has been a minister since he was in his 20s, and then he became president in his 30s. So even though he would have traveled widely, he would have traveled in a bubble. Even so, what it means is that even in his 20s, the vice president didn't know that from his 20s, he didn't have to experience GPL come in and disconnect your light and the bank foreclosing on your house. And you learn from those experiences that if I don't pay my mortgage, the bank is going to foreclose on my home. And if I don't pay my water bill and my electricity bill, then my water is going to be disconnected and inconvenience me and the children have to write common entrance the next day, and the water is disconnected today and the electricity is disconnected today. He does not have that kind of those kinds of experiences. So in his decision making, his life experiences, although he's been in government for most of his adult life and he's been in leadership, it's restricted to that bubble. And the president also. So our challenge is, how do we get them to understand? Because we have to think about, what if the government doesn't change and we have the same people at the helm for the next 5 years? How do we break through this bubble? So when the president says, when people talk about racism, show me the evidence, it's a part of that bubble that he has been living in for most of his adult life.
Sister Audreyanna Thomas of the Citizens Movement, that's what they are calling themselves. And you've been out on the streets yesterday. You're out there again today, protesting against the government's refusal to regularize the appointments of the acting Chief Justice and the acting Chancellor of the Judiciary, who are two Black women. You know, they don't just happen to be Black women. I was about to say that, but they didn't just, they are two Black women, two Black professional women. They have been acting in the position there for almost 8 years. They have demonstrated their competency. One cannot look at Roxanne George or Yonette Cummins and say that they don't know the way around the law. Yet, this government has refused to substantiate their appointments. Let me just say one more thing before I toss it over to you, Audreyanna. If you speak to most opposition supporters, they will have some negative things to say about Roxanne George. You know, I have had the fight on my hands here on this program to say, look, you know, Sister George may have made some decisions that we don't agree with, but that the court as an institution, we must protect it. And when we see Roxanne George sitting there, it's not Roxanne George, it's what that wig and whatever what they wear, what it symbolizes. And I'm making that point to say, one can say in plain terms, Roxanne has not used the bench to be hostile to the government. If there's a perception of hostility, it is on the part of opposition supporters who felt that her rulings on a number of matters were conservative, to say the least, and some of them are mad at her. This government has no reason to be mad at Roxanne George for the rulings that she has made, especially the rulings around the election. Yet somebody who's not hostile to them, they don't want to regularize. Why? What's going on here, Sister Audreyanna?
But you see, the government cannot even confirm the acting Chief Justice without confirming the Chancellor. So let's assume that they would like to confirm the acting Chief Justice. They cannot do that except they confirm the acting Chancellor. So I think what we have here is a situation where yes, that is one side of the issue. The other aspect is where the government has shown blatantly no indication after 7 years of these two esteemed jurists acting in their positions. The government has shown no interest in confirming them. And I think what is even more interesting is that the government has not even provided the people of this country with a reason, with what was if it is that the government does not want to confirm them, what is the criteria that was used to evaluate their performances. So what we would like to ask the government is what criteria, what mechanism was used to evaluate the performance of the Commissioner of Police, Clifton Hickins, for the government to determine that he was fit and proper to be the Commissioner of Police by any means necessary. And what is the mechanism that is being used to determine whether the government confirms the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary? So apparently the government has different mechanisms for evaluating performances. And so I think what the protests that we've been having and the awareness that we are trying to create, and it's more than awareness, it's also raising the level of consciousness also that the government must not and cannot anymore think that they can come to the people of this country and say, we do not want the acting Chancellor in this position. We do not want the acting Chief Justice in this position, and we are going to remove them. No, we must say why. And you're not going to move them until you tell us why. And you're not going to remove them until you say to us that these are the criteria, these are this is the mechanism that was used to evaluate their performances. What we would also like to see is what is the criteria that was used in the selection process for, let's say, perhaps because if they're removed, the government has to find other persons to be replaced in those positions. So the government must have some kind of a mechanism to determine suitability for their successors. So I really do think that the time has come for us to say to the government that as a people of Guyana, we've really had enough of this pedestrian and simplistic approach to governance, to decision making, which would impact our lives, and which could impact our lives in ways that that can be negatively or positively.
You were out there yesterday, and you were out there again today, as part of the protest. First of all, what was the and I rather suspect that you may have answered this question in your previous comments, but what was the straw that broke the camel back that said enough is enough? We're going on the road with this thing. I suspect it's the Hickens thing.
It's the Hickens matter, but I think also the president's year-end had a year-end speech where I think he was asking that he hasn't set a date yet for appointing the for the appointments, and he will decide something to that effect, that he will decide. I don't want to misquote him, but that was his comments at the end of the year was really the straw, and the Hickens appointment. I think those two things were really the straw that broke the camel's back, where we've decided that no, the president is really playing games, and we need to send the president a message that we're not playing games, or we're not playing games anymore.
And what has been the response to the protests over the last couple of days?
Well, we've had a few persons came out. I must say that we didn't have a crowd much, but somebody was saying yesterday that the Bible says 1 will put 1,000 to flight and 2 will put 10,000 to flight. So don't let us look at the crowd. Let us look at the fact that people came out. And so people came out. We had women came out, and we didn't have a big crowd, like I said, but I think what was big was the media coverage. And I'd like to say, and so the message went abroad, because even as I was walking through the street, somebody was telling me that I was looking at the program live. And so I would like to thank, on behalf of the persons who came out and who is supporting with this protest, I would like to thank all of those, the media, the social media personalities and agencies for coming out and broadcasting our messages. Some persons, I understand, did it live. I didn't know that at the time. Some persons did it live, and then today again we were out at the outside of the yesterday we were at the Court of Appeal, outside of the Court of Appeal, and then today we were outside of the High Court in King Street, between in Charlotte Street, between King and Avenue of the Republic. And some persons were passing and they stopped for a while, held the placards, and then we had some persons came out, the mayor, for example, because we were right outside of his office. And so the mayor came out, and Mayor Alfred Mentor came out, and he spoke with the press, and he stood with us for a while. And then we had Mr. Leon Saul, who is also a councillor at the Mayor and City Council. He came out and stood with us for a while. We had members of parliament. Yesterday, we had members of parliament, Annette Ferguson and Amanza Walton Desir. And then today we had Amanza Walton Desir. She came briefly again. And then we had Annette, MP Annette Ferguson came and she stood with us. We've also had Darren Wade, attorney at law. Darren came out, he held his placards, and he also shared his views on it. I mean, I'm not remembering at this point all of the persons, but we've had some good support, even though the numbers were not. I think it was quality, even though we can say that the quantity of persons, of people, were not did not come out.
Did not come out. If we can shift a little bit, and you have expressed publicly an interest in contesting the next election, and you've put that in the public domain. So you must be concerned about what's happening at GCOM. As we come on air tonight, we saw a statement by the 3 opposition commissioners that things are getting really bad at GCOM. They are now messing with meetings, not keeping meetings and schedule, etc., etc. How concerned are you that we are into the election year And outstanding issues, such as the voters list, such as the use of biometrics, such as an independent cadre and independent staff at GCOM, have not been addressed in a serious way by GCOM. How concerned are you?
Dr. Hines, I'm very concerned, but the GCOM issue is a part of the wider issues. All societies are constructed. Societies can be deconstructed and reconstructed. Even though this government is simplistic and have a pedestrian way of viewing things sometimes and making decisions, they are deconstructing our society and reconstructing it. And we have to look at structurally what is happening. For example, it is the Chancellor. This is an election year. It is the Chancellor who has to swear in the president. And so we have to be very particular. The president does not swear in himself. So when you look at the behavior of the government and the political party which is in government, the PPP, there's a reconstruction that is happening that we have to pay close attention to. And so the Chancellor of the Judiciary swears in the president. And so I would say no more on that. And the other aspect of that is where in the judiciary, we need an independent judiciary. And why is it that the president, I don't want to speculate here, but I think that it's an election year and I think it's there's sufficient movements, I would say. And so why is it that the president waited until 2025 to I don't want to say too much that is not necessarily in the public domain, but we have to push for an independent judiciary, because the role of the Chancellor, the Constitution says roles like the Chancellor plays a very important role in terms of if there's a gap, for example, in government. The Chief of Staff, according to the Constitution, and the Chancellor play very, very important roles. And so we cannot divorce what the Constitution stipulates and they seemingly, and some of the maybe silent movements which we are seeing, particularly in an election year. To come to the GCOM point, this is a part of raising the consciousness in our society. So the GCOM aspect of it, I'm very, very concerned because one, GCOM has a role to play in terms of ensuring that, one, in terms of the preparations for elections, that the preparations are done in a way that would enable free and fair elections, that would enable I would say not the best results, but the right results from the elections. And so GCOM at this point is moving, for an election year, is moving very slothful. The opposition has been calling for biometrics. The opposition has been calling for safeguards, essentially, to ensure that the electorate is the electorate that would be focused on for this election is really the electorate. So there are lots of questions. I think one, GCOM, sometimes one gets the impression that GCOM and the government are singing the same tune. They're reading from the same script. I'm not accusing GCOM, I'm stating a fact. And so sometimes we get the impression that they're reading from the same script. And I think that's something for us to, I don't know how the opposition, this is the official opposition, should directly engage GCOM on these concerns in terms of how they project their independence, because the government is also a political party that will be contesting the elections. So I think that the opposition should engage with GCOM on these points in terms of the seeming lack of independence from GCOM. And in addition to that, I think while there is protest, there must also be, the opposition must find ways to engage with GCOM continuously on their concerns. So one is the voters list, for example. One concern is the voters list. Two, I'm surprised that GCOM has not bought into the idea of integrating the system of biometrics into the whole electoral process. I'm surprised. And then the other aspect, I think, is for an elections year, in terms of a new voters list. People are calling for a new voters list. GCOM had 5 years to develop a new voters list. And I don't think that GCOM has provided us with sufficient reasons as to why. I'm not talking about the government here, because the government, GCOM is an independent institution, or it's supposed to be. So why is it that GCOM is not pursuing? Why is it that the GCOM has not pursued a new voters list over the past 4 years? So I think that the opposition needs to find a way to engage with GCOM more regularly and more directly, as against just in the media. Meet with GCOM, the GCOM in whatever form, and then broadcast it in the media that you've met with them and you've given them 1 month to address these issues. If they have not addressed the issues, then ask to meet with them again and give them another month, as against making just blanket and general statements.
Sister Audreyanna Thomas, political activist, social activist, here tonight, weighing in on a number of issues. On the screen there is a straw poll. It's a straw poll that is being circulated, and it originated from Politics 101. Those of you who have the time, if you can, just contribute there to this straw poll. It's trying to get a sense of where people's heads are as far as the elections are concerned. You can find this straw poll on Politics 101 Facebook page, Camps TV Facebook page, or you can go on my own personal Facebook page and contribute there to that straw poll. Some of you have already done so. Others, please do. Sister Audreyanna, do you plan to continue the protests in front of the courts?
Yes, we plan to 1 day a week for the rest of the month. So we'll be there outside next Wednesday. Every Wednesday from 11 to 1 for the rest of the month. We will be out there. We've decided to hold it outside of the High Court. This is between King Street and the Avenue of the Republic, between the Mayor and City Council office there and the High Court. So next Wednesday we're going to be there, and today we jokingly discussed that except the president if the president should set a date to confirm the Chancellor and the Chief Justice, then we will get our glasses of Moby and we will drink to that. So
are you hopeful that the president is going to move in that direction?
I think that what we have to do is to put the president in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
I think, for too long, Dr. Hines, and I have a way of speaking my mind. For too long, we have allowed the president to have a free pass, and the government rather to have a free pass. And so what I'm saying is that even if the president had ideas, we must put him in a difficult position where he has to rethink. And so he may decide that, okay, I'm not going to confirm them, but I'm not going to remove them. But we have made it very easy for the president, for example, he's appointed Mr. Clifton Hickens. He is, and then he came and he told us Mr. Hickens is a wonderful person and he had no other choice. Fine. So is the Chancellor and the Chief Justice also are wonderful at their jobs. So we must put him in a position where he has no choice. And so we're saying to the president, set a date for when the Chancellor and the Chief Justice will be appointed to their substantive positions. If the president, we're giving the president 3 options. Set a date. These people have been acting for 7 years. You shouldn't really be acting for more than 5 years. So they've been acting for 7 years. If it is that the government was not satisfied with their performances, why didn't the government move them before? So after they were acting for 7 years, then you decide that you're not satisfied with their performance. So one of the option is set a date and confirm the acting chancellor and the acting chief justice. The second option is if the president is not going to confirm them, if the government will not confirm them, then the government has to show cause. And the government has to provide in this country with a reason as to why these 2 persons who are acting are not being confirmed, but they confirmed the commissioner of police, Mr. Hickens. And the third option that we are giving the government is, well, in addition to the second one, we're also saying what is the criteria? Oh, right. The third one is if the government is not going to appoint them, then what we need is a scientific breakdown, analysis of how the president determine or how the government determine competence of these 2 acting jurors and how they are determine the selection process. So the president has those 3 options, but then he's going to come and say that he has a 4th option. And the 4th option is that he's the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and he has the authority to make the decisions.
Sister Audreyanna Thomas, social and political activist, speaking out tonight on a number of issues. Sister Audreyanna has been spearheading protests in front of the courts, as she just mentioned, asking the government to move to substantiate the appointments of the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary. The government has been dancing around, playing games since it came to office, and these ladies and gentlemen are asking the government to do something and to appoint those 2 ladies substantively to their position. Sister Audreyanna, you're a projects person among other things. And so you must have some thoughts as you watch the government roll out this $100,000 cash grant. The chaos, in some cases, mayhem, as Guyanese try to get this $100,000. Are you surprised that it's been so bad?
I am not surprised because from an institutional standpoint, the head really, an organization, a country takes on the form of its head. So what we are seeing here is this is the result of how the head of the country, the thinking of the head of the country. And I'm not surprised because I understand how institutions work, and we can't want to, what you put in, that's what you get out. And I think what we're seeing is what we're putting in, that's what we're getting out. And so, for example, why is the government not paying, for example, the public servants this money in their salaries in the banks? There's so many questions. why is it that there's some categories of persons who could be paid through the banking system? Why is the government not doing that? Perhaps the government may pay less on paying the banking fees than they would pay on security at these various locations. So that is one. And then they may be. I remember at one point we were trying to, at a particular organization, we were trying to pay the pensioners through the bank, and then we realized that some of them really didn't want to open bank accounts, or they didn't want to be paid through the banks. So there will be categories of persons who may not want to be paid through the bank, or may not even have bank accounts. But that should not be the majority. So I think, Dr. Hines, let us ask ourselves, if the government is having, if there's all of this confusion to pay $100,000 in a country that has 750,000 people. I try to imagine in India with 1 point something billion people, how do they administer developmental and how do they do governance? What I'm saying here is that the government must understand that it's not that we don't know better. And it's not that, so what we're saying is that they are, like I told you, but Mumbai has 30 million people in one city. How do you administer cash grants around 30 million people in a city? So I think that this is a part of the institutional breakdown. Let me give you an example. When the government came in, the government fired a lot of public servants. You have a lot of competent public servants who are at home not doing anything, while the president is having a 5:30 in the morning meeting about the incompetence in the implementation of government programs. That's because he fired the competent people. And so the competent people are at home, right? Sitting down, watching the president, sitting down doing nothing, watching the president having 5:30 in the morning's meeting. And while they are at home, Gaisuko, for example, Gaisuko produced 34,000 tons of sugar last year. Dr. Hines, when the APNU and AFC government left in 2020, with all the reorganization and the disruption and closing of 4 estates, they handed to this PPPC government a sugar industry that was producing 89,000 tons of sugar in 2020, almost 3 times more sugar than what was produced for this year. With all the disruption, you know why? It's because they were the management at the time, they were competent. They had competence. And so now the Minister of Agriculture said last week, he said they're going to shake up the management at Gaisuko, but they're going to leave the chief executive. Now this chief executive has produced 34,000 tons of sugar for the entire year. And the Minister of Agriculture said that he's going to remain. You know what is even more stunning, Dr. Hines? That the current chief executive of Gaisuko used to be the chairman of the private sector. So you're supposed to come to that position with such business experience and expertise that industry was supposed to be turned around very quickly. This used to be the chairperson, the chairman of the private sector commission that produced 34,000 tons of sugar. And this government is going to come out here tomorrow and talk about how incompetent and call people incompetent and say that they're obstructionists and all sorts of things. And we accept that in this country. And so they are part of coming back to the cash grant point. I'm coming back to the cash grant point. So what we're seeing with the cash grant is an absence of competent institutions, competent institutions, competent, I'm trying not to accuse people of being incompetent, but competence essentially. at the institutional level, competence at the conceptual level of government, because even the way how something is conceptualized, it will impact on the design and the implementation. So what we're seeing here, we're seeing a flawed conceptualization process, which led to a flawed design and a flawed implementation process. And it's frustrating to watch this government operate, or essentially to watch this government spend money without without any strategic plan, strategic approach to governance and to development and development. And like you said, they're going to come and say they spent billions of dollars on the cash grant, right? Billions of dollars. But what matters for the government is the figure. Everything is 100 billion. $1 billion we spent, $3 billion. So what impact? We don't look at impacts. We only look at how much money is being spent. So we've built 20 new schools. At the end of the year, we would also like to know how 20 schools, right, increased the level of education, the quality of education in the country. And so it's, I think the cash grant issue, to come back to your specific question, the cash grant issue is a symptom of Gaisuco producing, of how the country is being governed and managed, which has resulted in Gaisuco producing 34,000 tons of sugar. And the government must not come and tell us that the reason Gaisuco produced 34,000 tons of sugar in 2023 is because the APNU and the AFC government reorganized the sugar estate, closed down 4 estates in 2016, 2017, 2018. So years later, this is almost how many years later, right? The government has been in, this government has been there for 4 years. It is unacceptable to come and say that because the AFC government reorganized the sugar industry, that is why the sugar industry produced 34,000 tons of sugar in 2023. The APNU and AFC government, we must remind the government that the APNU and AFC government handed over a sugar industry that produced 89,000 tons of sugar in 2020, despite the reorganization. And ever since then, the Gaisuco has not produced 89,000 tons of sugar annually again. So it is unacceptable to come and say that the issues that we're having is because of issues with regards to the opposition. And the other point I want to make, which is as a result of why we're having these issues, the vice president likes to say that he's not going to add persons from the opposition on the boards. He's not going to say, he didn't want to send, I think, some bill to parliament because it's going to be held up. And Dr. Hines, we have to get to a point where we say to the vice president that, look, we went to school, not in August. And so the time has come for us to say to the vice president that what you're doing, you're trying to reconstruct our society in a certain way. Okay? It is, we have to say to the government, for example, that the opposition, or the opposition operatives, so to speak, or those who the government perceives as opposition operatives, that they're not obstructionists. Georgetown City was the cleanest under the PNC and under the APNU and AFC government. Dr. Hines, the time has come for us to say these things so that we can counter the narrative that is being put out there that the sugar industry is producing poorly in 2023 because the APNU and the AFC reorganized the sugar estate, right? That the city of Georgetown is in a mess because of the PNC people are in the leadership of the mayor city council. The city of Georgetown was the cleanest under the PNC government. and I'm not saying this because I'm carrying a brief for the PNC government. I'm saying, Dr. Hines, we have to start putting the facts and the truth out there. Under the APNU and the AFC government, this city was the cleanest. And we have to start saying these things, or else the government will continue to say that the city is in this way because the APNU and the AFC and the opposition and their operatives are incompetent. And unless we address it this way, if we want to solve a problem, we have to be honest and factual about what are the issues. And the government has gotten away with what they've gotten away with because too many of us, I'm not saying us necessarily as me as a part of the opposition, but I'm saying us in the context of me as a citizen of Guyana, we have remained quiet while the government continues to govern in a poor way and continue to peddle a narrative that is because of the opposition, and we're not doing anything to ensure that we have a better society, or not anything, but we're not necessarily doing enough to ensure that we have a better society and better governance.
Better society and better governance, Sister Audreyanna Thomas. And while Sister Audreyanna was talking about Gaisuku, she was not talking as someone who doesn't understand what's happening. She worked at the Gaisuku as the PRO, public relations specialist there during the coalition government. So she knows what she's talking about. Sister Audreyanna, is there anything you would like to leave us with as we wind down our program? Anything that you really wanted to comment on? You're free to do so now.
Dr. Hines, a big concern for me is I'm hearing the opposition saying a lot of when we get into government and when we get into government. What happens if you do not get into government? And I am very concerned. I am very, very concerned. Not that I'm thinking that the opposition can't get into government, because I do believe that the opposition has a good chance, right, to be the next government. But in life, there's so much over which we don't have control over. What is the opposition? What is the plan that the opposition has to transform or to influence the transformation of the lives of the people in its constituencies if it does not get into government, or if it gets into government? If the opposition gets into government, then they will be able to be in authority to hopefully transform the lives and communities of not only their constituencies, but the entire country. But I am concerned that also that what if that doesn't happen? So the opposition has to, and this is what I'm saying from now, while you're in the opposition, develop a strategy to influence transformation within your constituencies, transformation of the lives of the people in your constituencies. And that is a big concern for me, because I think that particularly from 2020 to 2025, this current PPPC government has used the seat of power in a way that I am still shocked after 5 years. I don't think many of us saw this coming. And it has been an onslaught, a consistent onslaught on, usually when a government changes, the government may go after operatives directly from the opposition. For example, they may go after the leader of the opposition. They may go after the former president, ministers. What we have seen, what is different with this government from 2020 to 2025, the government went after ordinary Guyanese people who were supporters of the opposition or who were perceived as supporters of the opposition. That was different, very different. And it requires a political response. So even while you may have, and if the opposition is weak, then you will have a weak civil society. So we're seeing a weak civil society because the opposition serves as a buffer between the civil society and the power of the executive. So the opposition mitigates against the excesses between the civil society and the government. So I'm just sharing, these are some of the things based on my observations. I'll tell you quickly. After I was protesting against that oil and gas waste treatment plant, GRA sent me a letter on the same day when I was on your program. The letter is dated September 6th. GRA sent me a letter for taxes. I have a little company that I run for taxes from 2017 to 2024. Now, GRA doesn't wake up one day and decide that they're going to send Audreyanna Thomas on the same day when I am on a David Hines program, Dr. David Hines program, talking about this oil and gas waste treatment facility. And when at the same time, when I'm advocating for the closure of this oil and gas waste treatment facility. And so they sent me that letter demanding, it was PAYE, demanding PAYE from 2017 to 2024. And that is about 8 years. And the company that we run, we hire consultants, and the consultants pay their own PAYE. So we don't pay PAYE. And we have submitted our tax returns for the company up to the 31st of December 2023. So GRA has all of the documents for the company up to December 2023, and they're seeing all of the activities which were being conducted under the company. So I'm just sharing with you, Audreyanna, an ordinary citizen out there advocating, right? And then the next thing I know, GRA has sent me this letter demanding taxes, and if I don't respond, that they will take me to court. What the government was trying to do is to shut me up.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
now, Dr. Hines, I know we're going over time. I'll wrap up here. Now,
Yeah.
this is an oil and gas waste treatment plant, which next 20 years can be an explosion of cancer, respiratory diseases in those communities. It is not that I was advocating because the government is trying to build houses and I am just out there as an irritant, right? But the government so badly wanted to have their oil and gas waste treatment plant at Coverdale, even though it was a health risk and environmental risk to the people in the community. And Audreyanna was the only voice that was left for a while. And the government came after me with the force of the state to shut me up. I'm just making a point in terms of the reason why we need a strong opposition to mitigate between civil society and the force of the state.
Civil society and the force of the state, Audreyanna Thomas. It's always a pleasure having you on. Again, you will continue that protest in front of the High Court for the next month. You will be out there on Wednesdays at 11 to 1.
Yes, 11 to 1, yes. Every Wednesday for the rest of the month, we're going to be out there. We'll be in front of the, in Charlotte Street, between King and High Street, and right outside of the High Court there, every Wednesday from 11 to 1. And so please do come out. Women, please do come out and support our distinguished, highly esteemed jurists, the acting Chancellor and acting Chief Justice.
Acting Chancellor and the acting Chief Justice, time for them to be appointed to their substantive positions. Audreyanna, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Hines. And I'd also like to encourage you to, there's a saying, evil thrive where good men do nothing.
Thank you
And
very much.
I do, please continue, because what you do also serve as a buffer between the powerful executive and the ordinary Guyanese people.
And the ordinary Guyanese people, the force of the state and the buffer between the force of the state, that political parties are not only useful when they're in office, they are even more useful when they're out of office in a society like ours, where their supporters or their perceived supporters are under the heels of a government that is not playing sport when it comes to let loose in the power of government. Again, Audreyanna, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night, Dr. Hines, and to your viewers, also have a wonderful night.
And to you, the viewers, thank you so much for staying with us another evening. We're back. We took a couple of weeks off during the Christmas holidays to recharge. And I took the opportunity to spend some time with my family. I don't get to spend as much time with them these days, being in different localities, but I was able to spend the better part of 2 weeks, my nieces and nephews and sisters and brothers, my mom, and so forth. And, as one gets older in this business, one comes to appreciate that you sometimes have to do things that everybody else does. But we're back. And tomorrow night, we're going to continue our coverage. I think tomorrow we're going to be talking about GCOM. And you saw that letter that was written today by the 3 opposition commissioners, drawing our attention to what's happening there at GCOM. We'll cover that tomorrow evening. So again, thank you all for staying with us, and I will see you all tomorrow.